Love, peace, and power, everybody. Welcome to the Mystery Arcade Occult Multiversity. My name is Kilel Kiano, aka Punami Codes. Happy Friday, happy Venus Day. It is January 30th, 2026. It is a 10 of Clubs Day. It is a 3 day, 3 for communication. It is a universal 5 day, 5 for freedom, beauty, sex, travel, benefit from movement. We have a very, very special guest. I am honored to present to you the beautiful and intelligent Lucia. How are you? Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Mystery Arcade.
Gilel, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful. I was actually very um, excited when you invited me to come on. We've known each other for a little bit now, and I'm doing very well. Today's been such a beautiful, peaceful day. Thank you.
I am happy to hear it. I'm happy to hear it. Today is a very interesting day. Very interesting day. Leave it to Friday to kind of save the best for last. I got to say, love, peace, and power to the monks who are walking across the country for peace. Special
Mm.
shout out to the dog Aloka, right? Um, Shout out to Dr. Aleem El Bey, Islam Moore. Um, Dr. Aleem got to see the monks passing by the other day. They're making their way
Mm.
towards me. I noticed something today as I made my way home a couple hours ago. It started snowing.
Mm.
We have and had another winter storm warning. With We were supposed to get 4 to 7 inches, right? Between tonight, all day tomorrow, and Sunday again. A reiteration of last weekend. But in the last 2 hours, something has kicked the storm away from here.
Mm.
And when I got home and noticed it, I looked at the forecast and all the snow vanished. 4 to 7 inches just completely vanished to a half an inch of nothing. I'm not complaining, but something was rubbing me like I was missing something. So
Mm.
I looked at the path of the monks to see where they were, and
Mm.
their path. You can depending on, well, it doesn't really matter where you are. You can look it up for yourself, but you can see how their path has diverted the weather. Especially, I'm talking about the storm that's coming up the East Coast right now. Now, I
Mm.
can't speak for above the Mason-Dixon line. You know what I'm saying? Once you get to
Mhm.
Maryland, so on and so forth. But that's something to pay attention to. When you understand the nature of Kundalini and what it does and what it represents, and how they are literally Kundalini moving through the country,
Right.
right? Um, th- they have to attract, I don't want to use the word attacks, but what looks like attacks, and especially in the form of weather, you know, we can get only give so much power away to them and they. And
Mm.
if we want to do that, who created them and they in the first place? Because that goes back to the same root, right? So
Right.
that's just something to think about.
Mm. Yes, very potent, actually. Very potent to start off the conversation around, this beautiful life force energy and what it can actually do in the sense of repel and attract. And especially with like the elements, I mean, it really shows how interwoven we are. So many times I hear people thinking that we're so disconnected from our elements, but I definitely believe that they're paving the way. It's almost like parting parting the waters, but snow, but snow fronts.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lucia, you are a Sicilian American queer feminist, priestess of Auset,
Mm-hmm.
which is Isis for those who may not know her by her Kemetic name, an interdisciplinary scholar devoted to healing ancestral, sexual, and religious trauma through embodied and spiritual praxis.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an idea of how you came to be this polymathic embodiment?
That's a great question. I think it was it's almost like a looking back kind of thing rather than of pinpointing this is the date and the time that the universe opened up for me. I I believe that there's just been like a journey, right? There's been like the wild little girl, the one that nobody um, that was just like liked everybody, but was always kind of awkward. Just growing up, in two different worlds, right? So being at home with my family, where we spoke Sicilian, and then kind of going into like the American culture, having these two different worlds collide. I felt very blessed that our family did not try to like stop speaking our language, which I think was really great. And part of it is probably because my parents came here when they were older. Like my mom was 19, my dad was in his 20s, like 25, 26, and um, he had actually come to Toronto first and then came to the United States and then was drafted into Vietnam. And that's how he got his citizenship. And then him and my mom met here. They were arranged marriage at the time. How I came into being, I feel that as I if I can have to pinpoint like a time where now I look back, it would probably be in 1992 when I was studying at Universidad de Madrid Complutense, and I was an exchange student in my undergrad. Which, I was becoming a Spanish teacher. I had started off as a fashion design major. It's a whole story, but I was studying at Universidad de Madrid, and I was a fine arts minor and as well. So I was just in this immersed in like very beautiful ancient art and ancient ways, like even going down to La Alhambra and like seeing how incredible that was really kind of pushed me into this activation. And that same year I flew to Sicily for the first time because I had been back. I had not been there, right? I was born in the United States. But my grandparents flew back and they met me in Sicily. And I will never forget, like they took me arm in arm and like walked me through the whole town. They showed me like the house that my mom was born in, which was dilapidated. They showed me where like my uncles were born. And then, we just walked around town. We walked up to the very top of this hill, and there's like this, I don't know if you know a lot about Catholicism, but there's like the Stations of the Cross all in like mosaic tiles. It was kind of crazy. And I remember thinking that whole time period, something in me was really waking up, and it really started to happen when I was in Sicily for that first time. Like I saw things completely different. Just walking on, cobblestones in my mom's town, which was located, it's called Valguanera Caro Pepe. It's like right in the center of Sicily. And then just a little south is my dad's town, and I went there as well. It's called Piazza Marina. So Piazza Marina had a lot of like Middle Eastern and Moorish influence, and you can see that in like this. They have like one of the oldest Roman villas that they discovered, and it's all like these wild mosaic tiles. You could see like how incredible they are. There's like this one particular section where there's like these women in bikinis and like laurel wreaths, and there's this one image of this woman. Her eyes are look like they're rolling in her head, and at first you're like, oh, there's just like a crown, and I'm like, you look closer, and I'm pretty sure it's like Amanita muscaria. It's like, oh my god, they were like, they must have been like frolicking. Like definitely, I started to kind of get awake to Sicily in general and like what role it played. So I started to really research my ancestral homeland, and that was really kind of like the beginning. And then traveling around the country, and then finally landing in California. I was an East Coast, West Coast transplant in the Bay Area, and now I live in Detroit, Michigan. But pretty much when I got there, I started to really kind of open up to all of the different esoteric practices. So I started learning about Tarot and Qabalah with a Q. My mentor was Amber. Her name is Amber Jayanti, and she's incredible. But she really is the first person who kind of opened my eyes to like the Rosicrucian Museum and Kemetic and Egyptian practices. And also I started to learn about the native plants and started studying formally with Janine Pollock was her name, and completed all of my studies in like native California plant medicines and plants in general, herbs. So, but I think even before that, like my grandparents, like my Nonna Maria, she was like what we would say in the United States as like a strega, or somebody who is considered like the medicine woman in the town. So my dad tells a lot of stories about her now. He's like, oh, you're just like her. You're the one who forages and knows how to do all the things just like she did. And I remember being a little girl in the backyard, like digging up dandelion root at like age 5 and, boiling it for tea and learning about, how to ward off like the evil eye, malocchio, it was called, and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure it was just ingrained. And then when I started to learn more around, how the layers of Sicily, the many layers of colonization throughout the years, throughout the centuries, everybody pretty much loved colonizing Sicily. Sicilia's on like ancient maps, before Italy even existed. And Sicilian is its own language, and the people were really what they say the melting pot. People would come in, and a lot of times they'd live very harmoniously together. But there's a lot of Moorish influence, especially in like Palermo and certain parts of the west part of the island, and also like the southern part of the island. And then so for me it was a layering, and then coming into like my own awaken that like divine feminine essence. I have a lot of masculine energy in my chart, my astrological chart, and I was always kind of like the girl who played soccer with the boys, and until like this opening happened probably around 9 or 10 when I got my first moon cycle, and I was kind of like, what's going on? Like it was one of these openings that I knew a lot. For some reason I knew a lot about the body at a very young age. And I remember in 8th grade I would listen to, you're probably old enough, Killel is Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Like she would come on the radios on Friday nights, and I would listen to her about, talk about the body and orgasm and all these things. And I was like 13 years old. And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. And she was the first person who ever said the word clitoris that I heard. And it was like, look, find your clitoris. I was like, oh my God, what is that? And so, and for me, that was probably one of the biggest openings to my spirituality. I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I was deeply raised in it, like catechism school, like church every Sunday, you know, definitely a lot of praying and stuff like that. You know, Roman Catholic Church. So it was kind of like ingrained, and I chose at one point to, like, you know, when I would hear like at youth group, the priest would be like, "You can't, nobody, tarot is about the devil," and I'd be like, "Oh, what's that?" Like, and so I was always really curious to kind of go against the grain, and I always remember having an affinity though to like the rosary, and like thinking like that was so different than what we were being taught, like, you know, at mass, or like there's something about like the, you know, the Madonna that was really beautiful to me. And of course now I know it's just another iteration of, you know, the beautiful Auset or Ast. And so a Kemetic, you know, the old traditions and knowings and wisdoms really kind of still stay alive, I think, through our stories, through the women, through the visual symbols. And so I guess that's a long answer to your question, but it's not one pinpoint. It's been a series of also my traveling and listening when spirit's like, "Oh, it's time for you to go to the Goddess Island." I'm like, "What the hell is the Goddess Island?" Like, there's so many. But, you know, like the first time, like 2018, I was in Sicily, and I led an immersive retreat called Surrender in Sensual Sicily. But then I went to Malta for like 3 or 4 days just to discover, like, I was being called there, you know, like this is part of your initiation. And then, of course, to Kemet in 2022 for the 220, 2022 portal. And so we were at Abu Simbel for that. And then, you know, a couple of years ago, being back in Sicily in 2024 in the summertime, and doing a little bit more of that, like on the land initiations, you know, like everywhere I go, just like following the path of like the the priestess, following the path of like Demeter, which is very much intertwined also with, you know, goddess of 10,000 names, or Isis, Auset. As,
Hmm.
mhm. So yeah, that's really kind of the gist of it. And in between there, I also researched, you know, extended orgasm for 15 years. Lived in intentional community. I'm a somatic sexologist, so I had a lot of training around that. Dao pelvic healing work, so really working with hands-on, you know, myofascial release, like the energy of our hands, you know, is really important. That kind of came through me too at a very young age. Touch was a big part of who I am. Um, and then, you know, I guess the other piece is like years of entheogenic use. I think I was like 21 when I first discovered LSD in the Adirondack Mountains, um, by this really great, not far from Jim Scallan's like bread, which doesn't exist. Probably the best bread I ever had in my life, besides my nona's. And definitely that took me into a realm. I remember, you know, just beating on trash cans like wild people. It was like, ooh, where are we? And you know, I remember I was with my best friend, who's still my best friend to this day. And then that was, God, I mean, that was like 32 years ago, because I'm 53 now. That was like my first experience. And then moving into like um, psilocybin mushrooms, which is my favorite, and what's something I work with now with my clients and with myself for my spiritual expansion. And yeah, so it's not separate. They're all woven together, you know, the pieces around um, understanding the Kundalini energy, the sacred codes of our womb spaces, the codes that get delivered, you know, through the light codes that come through during different experiences. And then, of course, you know, the traditional academic studies, as well as like the esoteric studies. So it's all kind of intertwined. So how I got to be Lucia is, you know, was just my grandmother's name. So it was just passed on.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that. That was a grand slam. You touched on so much. Um, I gotta say, shout out to Malta. Shout out to my older brother Zarelli, Mom Sylvia, Maltese side. Um, so we both went to Catholic school. That's
Mm,
one thing I can say, right? I have to ask you, being the ardent scholar that you are,
hmm
um, what are some of your first memories around religion
mm.
and mythology? Because um, within those realms, especially Catholicism,
hmm
it is what it says, and you don't necessarily get to question it, right?
Right.
Um, so I think, you know, I have to speak in my own experience. That tends to make certain things a little bit more pronounced.
Mm.
You know, I think certain things become a little bit more blatant. Um, for me, I got in trouble very early when I noticed that Mary Magdalene was said to be a prostitute,
Mm.
or more commonly a whore,
Right.
and that's nowhere in the Bible, right?
Oh.
And I got beat, you know, what they used to call a corporal punishment for, you know, for asking certain questions like that. Um, I'm very curious, what, if anything, kind of caught your attention, or garnered your attention towards a certain light or a certain revelation, because I know you caught on early with most things.
Yes. Well, I think one of the things for me, well, it was interesting because in my family, we actually had people who were in the priesthood and Carmelite nuns. Like two of my mom's aunts were Carmelite nuns, and one of them, Ziklorinda, she was probably one of my favorite people. Um, and so when I think about like Catholicism, like some of my memories, they were always like I always remember this idea of like I definitely always I think kind of veered more towards like the Madonna, like I said earlier. Like I always thought it was weird that we're drinking blood out of a cup. Or the concept that we're drinking the blood of Jesus Christ. It's like, why are we drinking somebody's blood? Isn't that like kind of like satanic? Even in wine. And that we're drinking spirits and we're kind of getting tipsy in church, and eating this like wafer. So for me, I also got in trouble, um, because I was also very like loud and um, very out there. So for me, some of the things I remember were really looking at the Madonna and looking at the shape of the Virgin Mary and like thinking that looks very much like a pussy. And just at a young age I was like, wow, this is like, I wonder why. Like, I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. I was always very curious. And then of course, I looked in symbols. I loved I really do love I always loved frankincense. So I always loved the pieces around the ritual. For me, ritual was a big thing. I was like, so I look back and think, oh God, there were so many rituals, right? Like, walking down, walking down the aisle, I'd see the incense holder, and I'd try to like smell that, and I'd always feel kind of like um, connected, right? I'd always feel connected after frankincense coming through, and I didn't quite know what that was. So for me, it was. Um, I look back now and I think, oh, these are all ancient Kemetic rituals. Like they got masked. They got masked in like this whole new like patriarchal sense of tamping down where the real energy was. And I think that's what really clicked in at a young age, that that I was, as a young Sicilian American woman, it was very ingrained in me that religion and sexuality were always connected, right? So for me to be a good girl, I had to go to church. And I think that's what I realized first, that it was a system to keep me down. And I was getting mixed signals in my family, because I had parents who were like, "You're gonna go to college and get a good job, and you're gonna do good, but you're gonna be a good wife." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like, what am I gonna do?" And it was all revolved around like this chastity around the church, right? And so that's one of the things that, again, like you said, you saw Mary Magdalene as being like the whore, and I always thought, um, I had said that too, like, oh, she's like the whore, the prostitute that came at Jesus's resurrection and was the one who saw him. And I thought, and they were trying to pass this off as like symbolically, even like the worst people are the ones that are like saved. And now I'm like, oh, she was potentially like the goddess giving him life again, almost another representation of Auset, right? Blowing back life into her son, her husband, both. And so for me, it's just kind of like one of those moments of, what did Catholicism really do for me? I decided, so what I didn't go to Catholic church. I mean, Catholic school. I went to regular school. My sister went to Catholic high school. I opted out. I said, there's no way. I literally said, there's no way. By the time I was in ninth grade, I just said to my parents, I don't want you paying for school like that. I don't want to go to catechism school, but I was going to like church youth group. I went to like Catholic youth leadership camp. We all snuck out. I think I made out with a boy. We all snuck out. It was so funny because I think Catholic girls were like, we did everything else but, have sex. I think by the time we were 16, 17, we were in it. But there, that the rules kind of like kept us very in line. And all I remember thinking is like, I'm never gonna teach if I have a daughter, I'm never gonna put her into like the Catholic Church. I want her to find her own beauty in her spirituality. So I look now and I see like all of the similarities with that that came through the Catholic Church. Now, as I read and learn about ancient Kemetic practices, I can see like where it all came from. And I see that, people are like, oh, it's just a correlation. I'm like, no, you can see the ancient ways came through, but they got distorted, unfortunately. And because, the divine feminine is very potent, as we know, as women are waking up everywhere around the world. And there's a shift, and those of us who are still those sacred intimates, those of us who work with the body, with with supporting that reconnection of mind, heart, body, spirit, we're getting dinged everywhere. There's just like there's just a spiritual attack on us everywhere you go. I don't know, I think I'm going off a tangent now, but hopefully that answered the question.
No, you good. I agree. There's definitely a wave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it never ceases to amaze me the different iterations of new waves of consciousness and
Yeah.
how it chooses to bloom or take hold in people. The mediums it chooses to use, many of which many people might deem not necessarily worthy of attention. Um, it tends to beg my attention a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this season. In winter, when nature is essentially
Mm.
dead or resting. I think is a better term. Um, it's almost like losing a sense. Like when your sight starts to go, your hearing gets better. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like one tends to offset the other. So what we choose to pay attention to, I think it resonates a little deeper at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Speaking of which, you mentioned something before it gets away from me. You mentioned that I think you said your parents had an arranged marriage.
They did. They did. They're from two different towns in Sicily, but the only like 30 minutes from each other. So sometimes how people met when they moved to the, immigrated. Um, People, friends of friends would be like, "Oh, this person's, available. So and so, Giuseppe Pavone just moved here. The family just all came and she's 19, she's of age to get married." Like that's how like my nonu thought. Like my mom needed to get married. So they knew the families knew each other. So how it went was they met and for about a year they met every week and they always had a chaperone. They never like dated. They kind of had to hang out with each other. And so they dated for about a year. My mom got married, like she got here at 19. She got married at 20. She had my older sister at 21. And so that was their arranged marriage and they stayed together maybe like 27 years and then they did, divorce. And so it's interesting because I look at that and it was pretty common, to be married by 20, 21 in Sicilian culture. And our my dad's parents lived with us till they died. So when they came from Sicily after my dad and my mom, when my mom and dad got married, and then I think they officially came back in 1972 when I was born and to live with us. And then my other grandparents, um, they lived like I don't know, like 5 minutes away. So if you can imagine, like everything when we were younger was very family oriented. Very Sicilian families are like we get together very loud. We eat a lot of food, really good food. We celebrate everything and you're always you know you're always together in that way. And so yeah, so my parents it was interesting because like I look back and like my mom, we so my mom had a 7th grade education. My grandfather, my nono nino, he wouldn't let her go to school after 7th grade because she would have to go to the co-ed school. And so he had her apprentice at age 13, which was totally legal. A lot of young girls at age 13 in that town apprenticed as a tailor or seamstress. So my mom to this day is like a master tailor. She's like one of the most gifted people I know. And so she's been doing this. She's 78 and she still sews and creates and she taught me to sew. So all those old skills. But not only sew, she had to make things for like her trousseau, as they called it. So I have like linens that have like lost art forms of different type of they call it reclamata, which is like a type of it's not a needle point, but it's kind of like a stitching. So it's interesting growing up with my parents. They were like my dad was like traditional, Sicilian machizo man wore his gold chains, and my mom was like petite, and it was interesting having, I got made fun of a lot because I didn't speak English till I was like 6, till I started school. So I had to learn English. I spoke Sicilian. People made fun of me because I didn't look like them, even though I was, white girl in the suburbs, it's like I still was different. Like I just we we were different. I my culturally, like we didn't eat meatloaf, like we had pasta. It's like uh, I didn't. I never, for example, I never made pot roast until I got married, and my husband was like, "Do you know how to make pot roast?" And I was like, "Pot roast." I was like, "I've never had pot roast in my life." And I was like, I think we started living together, and when I was like 26 or 25, something like that, and 26, I think, and his mom made pot roast. He's like, my mom makes like the best pot roast. And I was like, okay. So I learned how to make
No way.
I make a fucking mean pot roast. I don't eat meat anymore, but I because of him I stopped being one of the reasons I like didn't I wasn't a vegetarian for through off and on through my marriage, um and but yeah, I made a really good pot roast. It's very American. That's the most American thing I could think of is pot roast.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. That's definitely a classic. But you spoke it right into existence because it had to be his mom. you know, it had to be.
Listen, I'm sure there's a lot of men out there who like love, like they usually end up with people that remind them of their mothers. I mean, I definitely had a husband who would literally call me mom and be like, "Oh, I mean, Lou." Like, okay, this is we don't call
Whoa,
mom.
whoa, wait.
So you can kind of imagine, like, I was definitely the quintessential, like, mom, wife. I did stay home. I homeschooled my daughter always. I ran, multiple businesses. Still have my photography business through the years. Um, all these different things. I think I've lived several lifetimes, you know. Um, and it took like coming into where I'm at now over the past, I'd say 7 years, where I had to kind of like, it's been like the growing portion of like this part of Lucia. A lot of people know me as like a somatic sexologist and talking a lot about, sexual pleasure, healing trauma, but not a lot of people understand like my foundations and my roots and my spiritual roots, right? And the things that I intertwine and really the core foundation of my practice and my studies. I mean, my PhD, I'm getting my PhD in women's spirituality, right? So I dive deep into the um, the esoteric, but also the spiritual realms. And I've always been connected. I mean, I remember being a little girl and looking at the closet and being able to like communicate. And I was really scared at the time. I was scared of the dark for a long time. I think even till I was like 25, I was like, I need a light on. Like it was very, very interesting. I've traveled around the country by myself. I've done a lot of things, but the dark was something I was scared of, and because I would always encounter like the un the unknown energies, entities, and I didn't quite understand how to navigate them at that age when I was young. But now it's like I understand how to navigate my energy more than anything, and that is something that's come with seasoning, right? Like you're making this beautiful soup, and finally, it's like I finally put the spice into the soup so that like at the end you get that little heat, and so I think that's where I'm at now. I'm kind of like spicy soup, spicy lentils with mushrooms.
I like it. I like it. Um, it you mentioned some a second ago. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that my grandmother taught me how to sew on an old Singer sewing machine because she needed help with her curtains, and my mother wasn't going to do it, so I had to be the one. I know what that's like.
Was it the old pedal kind? Was it the pedal
Yeah,
kind?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one of those too. My Nonna Maria literally brought it from Sicily. It was like transported. And those things were the best because they're cast iron, they're heavy, they could sew through leather. And, they worked you out too. I mean, they didn't need electricity.
Well, what's crazy is when I started driving, like, my grandparents, my mom taught me how to drive, like
Mhm.
like the example. Um, but my grandfather gave me all the fundamentals, and my
Mm,
grandmother taught me what not to be afraid of because my grandmother hated driving. But
mm,
I got a very holistic, old school rearing in that sense. Um, when I started driving, it was the pedal that gave me comfort with the gas pedal because
mm,
I've always had big feet, and like it was just an awkward feeling. It was impossible for me not to drive with both feet when I started driving. Like
mm.
to really train myself to only use one foot. It came from that sewing machine.
Wow.
I had to think I was sewing, what I mean, for the longest time, and it worked. But it's little nuances like that actually show you how your own mind works,
Mhm.
how
Mhm.
you can retain things, and how you can find a way to make something work. If
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. When I think about that, I think about like some people have that like natural mechanical mind, right? Like tinker things and take things apart. I think mine was more of like creating, and so I knew how to like fix the sewing machine and all that stuff too. But um, I think for me it was like I acquired a lot of skills for like living at a very young age. Like I knew how to garden because we always had a garden. I knew how to like make things. I knew how to cook. I love to cook. I knew how to sew. I learned all those skills very young. It was like part of my culture, part of my upbringing as a woman. The roles that we played included all of these things. We're like in every good Sicilian family, there's two kitchens, the upstairs kitchen and the downstairs kitchen. And I spent a lot of time in the downstairs kitchen with my both my nonnas. So they taught me to make bread. They taught me to make arancini. They taught me to make saviar. They taught me to make all the things. Right? They gave me those foundations. And now I look back and think, like, and plus other times in my life where I lived on different farms and learned how to do all the things to stay alive. I remember growing up even chopping wood with my dad, all those things. I know that like I could survive without things, without the internet or stuff. If anything, that would be kind of nice sometimes. I think about that. Like detaching from certain parts and just having my land in Sicily. I think my big vision is to build a beautiful temple in you know for Auset, for Isis in Sicily. Return her home. They say Sicily was Isis's playground. So prior to all of the Catholic takeover and then prior to that, the Greeks taking over, the Romans. There was definitely a Egyptian presence. Kemet was very present. You can see it, you can feel it when you go there. You can see how it's transformed. And so that's definitely going to be part of my PhD thesis is really understanding how those African principles were brought to Sicily and then diluted. And so really kind of bringing back that spiritual foundation and understanding the morphine of Isis or Aset or Ast into Isis into all the other goddesses, right? All the other spiritual um, names of Isis. So yeah.
You just you just touched on something. Um, what you described perfectly displays a narrative. There's a series on HBO called Rome. I
Mm,
think it only ran for 2 seasons, maybe
mm,
three. I think it was only 2 seasons, but they gave you a very in that well, the second season they gave you a very thorough look at how Egypt was supposedly a prefect of Rome at one time, right? And you saw these intermingling of mythologies and spiritual practices and curses and sexual practices um, in a way that you hadn't really seen before,
mm,
because there's always this air of, this is pristine and this is, to be displayed in a certain kind of way as opposed to be associated with certain things or certain tenets. Um, what the point I was getting at before with the your parents having an arranged marriage.
mm-hmm.
So it's safe to say, of all the things that you're teaching, you're not necessarily teaching arranged marriages, right? The reason I say that is because you've obviously noticed that there is a evolution going on here, of course for the individual, but obviously as well for the collective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, to allow to help give someone the permission to feel and express what they feel through pleasure,
Mm,
through knowing the self.
yes.
Um, it indemnifies a certain kind of healing, right? Number one, obviously, that you have gone through yourself, because you don't necessarily have to share that, but to
Mm-hmm.
be able to teach and facilitate safe spaces for people to
Sure.
come into that energy themselves. That takes profound understanding as well as experience.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. I think, thank you for asking the questions. Yeah, what I can say is, and I think it's important to share your story, right? Like, I didn't just get here, I didn't just suddenly, and decide to call myself a womb healer or something from out of nowhere. It's like I had to go through the experiences. I had to watch my dad's shadow. There was domestic violence in my house. There was deep, you know, um, deep trauma. My dad was a product of Vietnam. Coming there, and there was a lot of that. I remember my dad telling me a story not too long ago, which just like blew my mind. He's like, "Yeah, I went to back to Sicily with your nonna back after you were born, and she took me to, I forgot what he called it, but it's kind of like a strig. It's kind of like the person who helps you to get rid of the evil eye." He's like, "Oh, she thought I was like infected." So he's like, "I still have this pouch from back then. That's this little red pouch with all these herbs that was my protecting charm." And I was like, "Oh my God, that is totally African." I was like, I mean, I just looked at that. Okay, so, but for me, like that process of like definitely going through all of the pieces around my sexuality and um, just the inappropriateness of touch and healing through that really wasn't until I gave birth to my daughter in 2000, August of 2000, that everything, I had a planned home birth. And after 4 days of labor, first of all,
Ooh.
I thought she was going to be a boy and be a Leo, but it was a girl. She was a I just want to say that. And she was, it's like the day she was born, the whole universe opened up really through my womb because she was born C-section, and after many days, and so I was literally opened up. I could feel like this energy take over, like, oh, suddenly I could feel all of the things I had numbed, and then it closed again, and I couldn't feel shit in my body. Like my genitals, everything was like numb. And I was like, you know, I was 28, 2 weeks after my Saturn 20, it turned 28 and I had a baby. It's like, oh my God. And of course, that being a mom transformed everything, but it transformed my spiritual journey, right? So I suddenly came into this place where I was now a mother, and I had to confront everything. I had to confront all the pieces. So I really feel like my daughter came here in many ways to like show me that I needed to do these healings, maybe for multiple lifetimes even. And so I went on my journey, you know? And so here I was looking at how do I communicate better in partnership? How do I have a climax that feels good in my body after I've had this traumatic experience of being cut open? How do I reconcile all of the pieces of my ancestors? Because that's a big piece. Like, you know, our ancestors' imprints go back 13 generations through our genetics. You know, epigenetics is real. Like, we get stamped. So I started looking at that. I looked at all the women in my family who were lines of like domestic violence and miscarriages, and both sides. Like, and I started exploring. It really opened me up on my sexual journey. And at the time, my husband and I started taking courses in communication and extended orgasm. So we were taking these intensive courses, and eventually in 2015, we started teaching, you know, to other people. So I was like in orgasm for an hour, which is not climax, but orgasmic states, right? High intense orgasmic states. It took a long time, but in the process of like, there was a daily ritual of being in these heightened states of orgasmic energy. And for me, that was like, what happened during that time of learning is I kind of, for a couple of years, just kind of pushed away the spiritual stuff and focused on the body stuff. And then, so I wasn't quite feeling like, you know, totally full yet. So I was learning about this one piece of myself, like the clitoris has like 10,200 nerve endings. Back then it was like over 8,000 that we thought, but you know, studies show that it's more now. And so for me, it was this process, like through my orgasmic energy, I was starting to have clarity. I stopped having panic attacks. I started having visions. Of course, this is like, at this point, like 26 years ago, I'm starting this journey that I thought was separate from my spiritual path. It wasn't until after where I started to see it all together, and I started to bring it back together. Started to bring back my work with entheogens, and started to see the wholeness of how all of the threads, the golden threads, started to weave. So a lot of times when people come to me, they're like on their spiritual journey, but they haven't landed in their bodies yet, right? And so I landed in my body. Luckily, just like by the divine grace, I understood the calling. I said yes to it, and it took me on a direction. It also expanded me beyond my marriage. I was married for like 23 years, and that expanded me beyond. Like I was being pulled in this other direction, and I didn't know what it was, but you know, everything imploded, like it blew up. 2019, everything blew up, and then COVID hit. It's like, oh my God, what the hell? And I had a lot of time during that time. Those are like Clubhouse days. At that point, I already had a ton of knowledge, but I hadn't put it all together in a free flow way, right? I had been amassing this great great deal of understanding of universal law, pleasure, orgasmic bliss. And I knew how to talk about it. I knew I've been in it. I was living the experience. It wasn't just like, book learning. I was actually, this is my lifestyle, living in pleasure and joy. And it still is. Like that's why I'm a pleasure instigator. And pleasure is not just like orgasmic energy and fucking. It really evolves beyond that into everything that you touch, you feel, you smell. So your space around you, like what you see. So if you have like, whenever like I'm looking at my dirty socks, I came in real quick. I'm like, oh guys, there's dirty socks on the ground. I used to be very messy as a teenager, and then as I got older, I realized how important, like if my space needed to be aligned for me to be able to be connected. And so that was one big thing, and also to get to know who I was. And so the pleasure also brought me back to like how our bodies are so colonized, by puritanical beliefs. And like we were having a lot of like settler sex, people were having this very boring, like, shame filled experience around their sexuality. And I was like, I really wanted to get to the core of like, dismantling that shame, that shit. And of course, this is the body that I came in, and I had a lot of privilege around, having a white presenting body, but having also this other piece of who I was, which was like very deeply rooted in Sicilian culture and even like, the African diaspora and genetically. And so as I was learning who I was, my body started to kind of move before, I had Zafira. I had kind of run off across the country, started like working at the Renaissance fairs, and I really got my lane wasn't the English side, but more like the Middle Eastern, like Turkish coffee house, and dancing on like stage, and learning, all of the Amazigh, or as they would, I say Amazigh. I don't need, there's North African, Tunisian dancing, which is part of my lineage too. And it's like my body already knew how to do it. So, and I was dancing in a troupe for a long time. And so all the things that I did, I could see now. I see like, oh, there's just like they're threads that have created the tapestry. And then when I fully dove into like figuring out my pleasure, it was really having to go to Sicily and travel through, parts of, North Africa, to Egypt, to Tunisia, to Morocco, and to see like how other people that I could connect with in a different way energetically. I always felt like home, like whenever I'd go to Sicily. So especially around my sensuality, like I could actually be in it and just and walk and feel that kind of connection that I remember being like when I was 19, first went to Spain. It's like the first time I actually ever got kind of like attention, like as a woman. When I was younger, I didn't get a lot of like attention, like kind of like, men giving me attention. I wanted attention. I was really loud, but it wasn't until I was like a little bit older where I started to see like people showed interest in me, like physically, and then I was like, oh, like what is this? And that's again going back to that awakening. I think I was in this awakening. It wasn't really the physical form; it was the spiritual form that was awakening, or reignited closer to where a lot of the ancient imprints had happened for me already. So navigating my sensuality and my pleasure now as a woman who doesn't bleed anymore, who has gone through all these experiences, I don't have necessarily the same experiences. Like, people talking about, oh, you're going to be 50 and you become a crone. I'm like, no, baby, I'm a sensual sage. Like, I'm in my highest elevation. My body's functioning good. those things are happening. I'm not having hot flashes all the time because I'm in that energy, right? I'm not looking at it as a negative thing. I'm looking at it as like this bliss. We're constantly in states of like higher vibration. That's why a lot of, women tend to like go off on their own because they're like feeling in those higher states, and, you know, they're creating. We're in this like high creative zone. But I actually feel like we're in our most creative when we're in union, and or at least I do for myself. Like I feel like being in union is really an amazing way. And union can mean many different things, and it doesn't always have to be man-woman dynamic. It's just the energies, So when we have good friends and partnerships of all kinds, I think we should be willing to explore everything under the sun, not just monogamy in the sense of what it is today. Monogamy just came out, or marriage came out for the sole purpose of creating children to, work the land. But usually people had, at one point women had multiple men, and it went both ways. So I think I'm going on a tangent, but for me, when you're talking about pleasure, for me, if pleasure is what you're seeking, you're really going to find it in everything that you touch, that you do, in the words, in the food. I encourage you to like eat your food slow, to sip your water slow, your tea slow, spend time with people, encourage, like, hug your friends. Like, touch is probably the most underused sense because we've been told to stay away from each other. But we're these beautiful, resonating electromagnetic beings, all this energy coming from the heart chakra, and we need to replenish with each other. And I think there's far too little touch. People are scared of each other. People are masking their scent with all these chemicals. People are diluting their sense of smell, because they're being all these synthetic fragrances. Their eyesight, is um, eyesight is like where we get 90% of our information, and so what we're seeing is like flashing like images into our eyes, going through security with clear, and being on the phone, and all these different synthetic lights that are coming through. So you have to be really on it, we're being really taught to, again, more and more, to come into this like puritanical life of truly who we are as beings, is fully sensing. We're meant to be in energetic physical connection with each other. We're meant to like get turned on and enjoy our pleasure. And so everything that, to me, that is false is anything that is being thrown at us to tamp down our senses, to tamp down our sensuality. Sensuality is how we get into those higher states of our spiritual knowing. Because if we can't feel it here on earth, as above, so below, and we're always just up here, we have to like embody this. When you embody it, then you understand. Then you're like, this is reality. This is the truth. This is not just like, people are so confused. They're like, oh, is it real? Is it not real? Like, for example, when they're on a mushroom journey. I'm a high dose mushroom person, so I wanted to shout out the late Baba Kalindi E and his family, and even my mentor Baba Murubaki. Here in Detroit, is where this real beautiful movement and remembrance of entheogens and of the African diaspora has come here, right? So when you're in proximity with understandings like that, what it means to actually be in higher levels of awareness and then bring them back down, that's what I believe. When I see what Baba Kalindi was doing, was like bringing it through and showing us, martial arts went hand in hand with entheogens, and the body is important. So even like beyond martial arts, like movement, dance, all of that's super important. How we connect and bring it down to make it a reality. So this is why the idea, concept of pleasure and sensuality is so important, and even sexual pleasure. I mean, a lot of times we're like, I'm not going to skirt around that pleasure either, because that is a divine pleasure. Like when you're in union like that and you are building that energy, whether you just build it or you move it or you climax with it together or separate, that is, you're literally, supporting the remembrance of the planet. Healing is just remembering your wisdom, by the way. It's not like trying to, like when we're like, I'm in my healing journey. No, we're in our remembrance journey. Like we are remembering. The sun codes are coming down, right? We're being filled with this light. So when we're supercharging our bodies, we're our own battery pack, right? That orgasmic energy, that is our fuel, breathing into our ovaries, breathing into our testicles. It's like what you're breathing that energy, and you're creating the cosmic alchemy. You're alchemizing every single freaking day, you know and everything you do. So if you're numbing yourself, if you're avoiding, if you're unwilling to like engage other people, if you're only going to be spiritual but you aren't going to understand where the portal that you came through, seriously, like you can't avoid understanding who you are unless you understand the divine feminine, because you literally came between her thighs. So I think about like that energy, and people with ovaries, we have this innate, overflowing energy that doesn't really run out. People are like, oh, if you have a penis and you ejaculate often, you're going to lose your life force energy. But women with ovaries, or people with ovaries in general, have like an infinite amount of overflow. We're super, super energized. We have the call, and we put out the scent, and we're followed. So we're the ones who have the infinite amount of energy. And that's why when you find a woman and she's like lit up and she's in that, you see a lot of people start to kind of want to take her energy. And so this is something that for women out there, if you're watching, if you're one of those people who got the call, and you are the sacred intimate, you're the vessel for like divine love, if you're connected to Auset or Hathor, or Demeter, or the Madonna, or whoever, like the divine feminine, or Mary Magdalene, right? They say the divine prostitute. No, we're the sacred intimate. We're the vessel for the divine to come through. And people, when they get to that light, that stage, so many people want that energy. They want to siphon that energy. And so just to be really careful who you hang around with, protect your peace, protect your body from all of this, because there is a spiritual attack happening right now. If people know who it is, we know it, we feel it. You gotta keep cleansing your body, getting rid of those fucking parasites, getting rid of the pieces that you don't need anymore, tightening your circles in, that kind of stuff.
You touched on something a minute ago. This is a topic of conversation I'm going to have on another day, but I want to drop it on you because I think we could learn something from your opinion, your knowledge, your insight on this. So we know that through generation and regeneration, through incarnation, through copulating, through reproducing, all children are female first, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for one reason or another, some will receive a signal to turn into a male, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we know that the technical term I guess would be white male. The white male is the weakest
Mm-hmm.
uh, child born. The black female is the strongest, right? So there's an intention there because there was an essentially a signal that gets flipped. I'm going somewhere with this, right?
I think
So
you're going somewhere deep, so keep going.
when we get to a certain point in our lives, or when we walk back to our original mind to a certain
Hmm.
degree, um, there's a certain level of inner child healing that has to take place or has taken place, right? Um, I have learned and I have noticed through different exercises, different practices, different meditations, and experiences, not just with myself, but with clients and friends and family, people who do inner child work, um, those who may be able to go the, dare I say, the extra step and be able to envision themselves like, I would like to think obviously a man, but something changes when I envision my inner child as a female.
Hmm.
Now that's going to throw some people. That's going to jar some people. I'm not taking it beyond that. That's on the individual. But to see yourself, if we're multiversal, if we're existing in all these different places and
Yeah.
spaces and time, right? Um, there's a benefit we get from that to truly be able to see yourself through both sides because what we call masculine is only the aggressive side of the feminine.
Right.
So
Right.
if you're a man, you're here to study your feminine side and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately what you're getting back to is the recognition and allowance of people to truly see themselves in all aspects. And am I saying that right?
Yeah. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. Um, so the construct of gender, right? That's constructed, right? It's constructed through what we know, the roles that we've put onto somebody. But honestly, like there's an energetic, you know split. It's energy. There's no man woman when there's a connection, right? That first spark connection of egg and sperm. um there's chromosomes, right? But we haven't said, oh, this is a boy or girl yet. We have like we basically have ignited this experience of life within a womb, within within a body. I mean, how amazing is that in general? Like that can happen. Like when you think about like how a person comes into life, it's like this light, this divine spark. Um, and we all know that the primordial waters did not have a gender, right? It's like the darkness, which had the greatest light. And I want to just acknowledge what you said about the weakest and the strongest. Yeah, when we go back all the way to the very origins, when I've gone back in, of course, it's the divine mother, the great mother, and she is, black woman. She's dark, she's melanated, of course. That's where we all come from. And so, in order to attain that type of experience, you know, the pieces of knowing fully who you are isn't just like, oh, I like this or I like that. It's a balancing. Like even if you look at, let's say, the high priestess in the tarot, so it's the two, and She's not the empress, right? There's the high priestess and the empress, then the emperor. A high priestess has pillars on each side, masculine and feminine, the balance. There's always that. The number two is very specific. It's it's joining yourself together, right? You're coming into your full alignment when you understand both experiences, and it's not what we think of, like, oh, masculine means this or feminine means that. It's way beyond what we can even fathom. There's really not. They're just polarities of energy, and when they meld, they fuse together, and you start to kind of get it. You come into your oneness, right? This is what coming into heightened states of, when people are looking at nirvana, they're going towards nirvana, right? To oneness. Oneness is kind of like always like right here. We glimpse it. We glimpse it every time we have, let's say, a climax. Your whole body opens, and for like maybe 30 seconds to 5 seconds, you come into your like oneness, divineness. Maybe you've experienced that with a partner, and you're like, you both are climax, and you have to be very careful with that too. There's like portals that you open in the womb space, and I've been with a partner or two that's happened with, and that is like, you can be in that, you can understand the other person through your womb very fast, and so coming into like this piece of like of gender, which is interesting because my master's degree is in women, gender, spirituality, and social justice. So we studied, the concept of gender to me from this like scientific point of view versus spiritual point of view, is very interesting, because I look at it from the primordial waters, right? And like Mami Wata. It's like I look at it from a different angle than like, this Eurocentric model of like masculine, feminine polarities. It's like, well, the primordial waters weren't gendered,
Right.
There is no gender. We have, in Kemetic sciences, it's like we don't talk about man, woman. We talk about, night, moon, sun, um, and so we have like Ra, Neath, and under Ma'at. So we have to look at that in different ways. So getting to know myself personally, like who is the feminine flow, really came through exploring my softness, through my orgasm, right? My orgasmic energy, and understanding that, for lack of better words, the masculine side came through expressing my rage in a way that, that balanced me. People think it's like if we have rage, especially women have rage, that somehow that's a bad thing, you know? Mm. But don't you have volcanoes? Don't you have Pele? Don't you have, you know, Kali? Don't you have uh, the fire? That's necessary too. Destruction, the tower. We need that healthy dose of rage in order to break down systems that are no longer serving us as a whole. And this is what's happening, is that there's been a silent rage within like the divine feminine, and it's alchemizing, and we're finding each other, and they're scared because it's opening. The portal's open. It's open. We're through it. We're just on the other side, and what we're doing is, we're trying to get shit balanced again. Been off balance, off kiltered for so fucking long.
This year, is going to be a very telling one in that vein because as we switch from this wood snake to the fire horse next month,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to see, and we're actually seeing it now.
Right.
Today's a very good example of that. But we're seeing it to a large degree with women taking their natural role as leaders. You know, people are going to feel how they feel and do what they do, but it's really a little bit more of a validation when that occurs. Like we're going to see this year. Um, this 10, this one, you're talking about the most elite of any and every species, of any and every facet.
Mm.
Um, if we look to nature, it's the female who's the deadliest and the most intelligent of every species. So
Mm.
that's going to be reflected this year. Um, I have to ask you. I have to give a wonderful shout out to my hometown, Detroit. What up, though? Um, which you have relocated to, showcasing the benefit of travel, that beautiful five energy. Um, what is it about Detroit that not only found its way to your heart, but kept you there?
Mm. Well, I'll tell you how, I'll share how I got to Detroit. So I was living in the Bay Area after going through my divorce. I had moved back to like Oakland and Berkeley and just felt a little bit more like I was living in Santa Cruz for so long. And it was, Santa Cruz, it's kind of like this very elite whites, beach town that has is progressive. I was kind of over that. I was over that dynamic, and so I wanted to just kind of be back. And then COVID hit, and I was in again very progressive area, and I was like, okay, well, I was doing my own deeper work, and I was looking to see who my entheogenic community was. I'm like, there's got to be other people doing what I do. And I was on Clubhouse, and I had heard through Clubhouse that there's going to be a talk by this guy, Darren LeBaron, and Baba Murubaki. And I was so interested because Baba Muru was going to be talking about um, entheogens in the African diaspora, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. I don't hear anybody talking about this, or it'd been this is like maybe 2020 ish, 2020, 20, I think 2020, maybe 21, and and then I went, you know, it was still during like COVID-ish times, but people were like, fuck it, we're gathering, and at least this community was, and and so I listened, and I was just like blown away. I had never really done more than like 5 grams of mushrooms, and I heard like, oh my God, these people are doing these, like big doses. I'm like, it just blew my mind, and so I talked to Baba Mudu, and he had to kind of like feel me out, like who's this lady. I was just so fascinated with. He's just like a brilliant person, and I just was called to kind of go to Detroit in 2022. I spoke at the Detroit Psychedelic Conference um, in the summer, and I literally just turned 50 and flew out to Detroit 2 days later. So it's really that, like, that was the moment, right? That in my chart where like suddenly I became the bringer of knowledge. And so I came and I spoke about somatics, psychedelics, and healing. And a lot of people weren't totally talking about that. It was like really underground, and so I brought this dynamic around what my work that I was doing, because I was doing it because there's no real the only model I had was like ancient temples, like temple practices, right? Using psilocybin for ritual and healing, and the sacred, temple priestesses, the hore, who were healing the men from battle. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take this model of using psilocybin and touch and care and consent in modern day, some ancient methods for modern healing. So I was working in this realm that nobody had really known about, and I came to Detroit, and I loved the energy of Detroit because I grew up on the East Coast in Rochester, New York, and it kind of had that vibe of Rochester. There was a lot of history, um, and I didn't know a lot of Detroit history, but that time, when in 2022 we went for like a big ride. I remember Baba Mudu took a bunch of us on a ride, and we went to Belle Isle, and then we got to learn about Detroit, and I started to see the similarities, but I didn't know very much about redlining in Detroit. I didn't know about like the deep. I knew about the history, but not as deep. I live in Midtown in Detroit, so I live right by Woodward, and so it's like this whole street has this historical, energy. You can see the obelisks by the Masonic temple. You can see the copper topped, Tartarian churches. You can see a lot. Detroit is old, older than
Yes.
we know, and the
Yes,
people.
indeed.
So I think that started to draw me, and then I actually did a journey in around New Year's Eve that year. And Spirit said, pack up your stuff and go to Detroit." It's like, what? Like Detroit? Like it's fucking cold. I was like, oh my god, couldn't you just say go to Sicily now? But I didn't. I went to Detroit. I literally sold or gave away everything I had except for like one 10 by 10 unit, which I still have in California. But I basically brought the things I need with me. I kind of pared it down, and I started a whole new life. It was just transition time. It was winter. It was like actually February 1st is going to be 3 years exactly that I've been in Detroit. Like I've moved, and then I was flying back and forth for about 5 months because I had clients in California. I mean, it was big. Like I barely knew anybody. I knew like 5 people. Like, and a couple of them were um, like Baba Kalindi's daughters, and
Mhm.
that was like we had gotten to know each other through Clubhouse actually, because we were talking about all this stuff, and we just became we became friends, and so that was really beautiful. And then um, slowly making friends with other people in the community. But I realized that what it did was it showed me who my close friends were, like who my inner circle was. So I've really tightened my friendship circles down. It's hard to get access to me.
Mhm.
People were just getting a lot of access to who I was, and so Spirit brought me to Detroit, and the reason I don't leave is because Spirit is keeping me here. I've gone through so much transformation, and like okay, so one of the things about Detroit is that Detroit is going to like you have to be who you are in Detroit, or it's gonna just rip you apart. Like if you come thinking you're gonna be some savior or change the world, or like no, you just gotta come who you are.
Mhm.
In certain circles, like you know, I live in primarily black city, and I'm white. I'm a white woman coming in from California. It's like how did I end up in Detroit is because I was being called back to like some ancient roots, right? Some ancient understanding, and I was willing to come here and be the warrior that I am. So Sekhmet energy is all around me. I am a Leo. I'm a lioness. And I am a warrior too. So I came and I did start to study with Tamarian for a little bit, and you know, and support, the Tamarian family as well. And so for me, it was like, okay, Detroit also takes a lot of energy. It also kind of feeds around some of the light, because even like wintertime is really dark, and
Yeah.
and cold, and people can get stuck here. There's a place where I think people, they're trying to help each other, but they're they're using they're not they're using like ways of, for example, religion. We're still kind of in the Bible Belt. So you're having these, like, religions that are influencing communities that have, like, roots in deep ritual and tradition. That it's like it's suffocated, I think, a lot of the essence of who people are. So coming to Detroit, I have learned to just listen more, watch more, um, and love more. Like, I have my level of compassion and love for myself has increased, and I think that that's what I my intention is to always reflect that out. Like, if you aren't willing to, people say that sometimes that's like almost a detriment here, like to have be compassionate and have a lot of love. But I don't. I actually think it's really important. I think it's something that we need more of. And I just love Detroit. I love the I love the energy. Right? People are gonna be fucking real. I like people who are real. Like, just tell me what it is. That's Rochester was the same way. Like, just that's not bullshit. Like, I was in the Bay Area bubble for way too long, and no offense. I mean, I lived longer in California than I did in Rochester at some point. So, but there is a Bay Area bubble, and the bubble is like, oh, we're all peace, love, and happiness. Well, yes, but there is like real shit happening. Like, there is some real shit happening, and Detroit is one of those places. And so, I think that people who get out of Detroit and see other things, and then they come back and they bring elements of travels and mysteries and stuff. But I think Detroit in itself is fucking old. It's old. There's people who know all the stuff, and they're sharing it now. So I didn't come in, thinking I was going to be teaching any kind of new wisdom. If anything, I've been learning a lot of the lessons and trying to, like, share. For me, it's about, like, imparting the wisdom, the code that I know, right? We're all like, I have certain light codes that I'm bringing in here too. I know what they are. We can't really talk about them because it's not like a talking kind of thing. It's an energetic thing.
Hmm.
I stir shit up everywhere I go. Like, I know what I do. I know what I do just by being in this body. Does
Most
that,
definitely.
does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, most completely, completely. Detroit is it will always be my favorite city. Um, the only reason I'm not there is because it's cold. You know what I'm saying? It is extreme. It's man, um, it's extremely cold for me. So many of the fires that used to burn,
Mm-hmm.
they burn internally for me now. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So it's that I can only get that from me. But the Penobscot building?
Is that yes, I do. Is that the one with the what do you call it? 1920s architecture downtown?
You're thinking about the Guardian building?
Yeah, oh, that's the Guardian building. Okay, tell me where
Yeah,
the other building that you're talking about is.
the Penobscot's not far. It's on Woodward. It's right by Wayne State.
Oh, yeah, so by the DIA, by where I live.
Yeah, I grew up in that building. My
And yeah,
mother
oh wow.
my mother was a secretary for the board of education out of that building, and then
Oh.
on the base floor, there used to be a Coney Island, and there used to be an arcade. That arcade is where I grew up, and that's where this name came from.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Wow. That's so, I love hearing like how you evolved through the years. That
Thank
must be,
you.
I, I could tell now, like, girl, I know exactly where you grew up because I literally live around the corner from that building. Now I know exactly where it is because I saw that, I see the name on the, it's still kind of, there's like, it's not too far from the church on the corner, the red church.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I live literally at like a block from there.
that's wild. Yeah.
And I do love to kind of walk down that way. There's a lot of that whole like that whole street has like a frequency. I'd like to know like what kind of um underground energy is happening in that, like, there's all those old buildings that have those that go way down. I keep thinking
Yeah.
there's tunnels underneath the whole city.
Well, that's the thing. That's one of my favorite things about Detroit. One of my favorite points of focus these days, in terms of my own projects and my a book. One of the books I'm working on is the quote unquote Tartarian aspect. Um,
Everywhere, I swear to God, I live in a Tartarian house.
oh, indeed,
I do.
indeed.
Yes, I do, because it's brick and it's got all the features and it's got a basement.
Yeah, yeah. Just a lot of these things were essentially standard in Detroit, where a lot of parts of the country, this was a later addition, if then, to this day. But Detroit is a one of the original cities of the Nephilim, of the giants,
Yes.
and it goes into Canada. It goes into what's now called Belle Isle. Used to be called a few other names, but it goes very deep underground, especially in the salt mines. But that's going to be lead to another conversation because
Wow.
there's a salt shortage right now for some reason. That's another
Okay.
conversation. Um, there's um, Detroit had its own World's Fair in was it 1897?
Mm,
1897, 1893. I get them confused, but it wasn't as highly popularized as some of the others that were from
mm,
1851 to 1915,
mm-hmm.
um, because Detroit wasn't destroyed like so many other
Right,
cities or sites were. The east side was destroyed to a large degree, but that was in '67 due to the riots. You know what I mean?
right,
Um, a lot of the grand architecture, it's just there, and we're
right.
we're so used to it, we don't necessarily like, oh wow, like look at what this actually is and how did we build this, But that's um, you you have to pay attention. Eh,
You
eh,
do. Yeah, I was just in Nashville a couple weeks ago. I was looking outside of our building that we were staying in, and I was like, "Oh my God, look! There's like remnants of the Tartarian Empire here, like everywhere I went." I was like, I could see like similar things that were here in Detroit, in Nashville, Tennessee. I'd never been to Nashville. It was my first time, and I was there for like I'm also work in the financial industry and insurance industry, and we were there for a conference, and I saw the buildings that were like so similar to the ones down in downtown Detroit. And I thought, yeah, this is like we we're much more ancient than we know. Like people trying to fool us and thinking like, oh yeah, we're not that old. Like I think the just the sheer level of skill that people with horse and buggies had to have, hammer and chisel, like
it gets to a point, with just a very limited amount of research where you can say, okay, this is all bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just not possible. There were no cranes,
Nothing.
there were no power tools, there were no drills, there were no levels. You know what I mean? Like there's absolutely, and when you look at what's classified as construction photos,
Hmm.
essentially you have a already fully constructed building with scaffolding on it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then we don't really understand how old Photoshop actually is, and how deep and how simple some photographic alchemy
Hmm.
actually is to be had. But that's, again, it's the last thing I'm ever trying to do is convince someone. I love to provide resources and examples and let people, um, draw their own conclusions, because we have more important things to do.
Oh yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I remember like when I first started kind of understanding like learning about extended orgasm. I was like proselytizing to everybody. I was like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing since peanut butter and jelly. Like everybody should have orgasm all the time." Like, I lost a lot of friends. Like I remember that those first couple of years were brutal. They're like, "Oh God, like you're living in a cult. You're da da da." I'm like, listen, I it wasn't for me, it was a learning experience, and I knew that like I was always ahead of time. Now everybody and their mother wants to learn about like the things that we were, I was learning back on that journey early, and I was already talking about, that type of level of orgasmic energy, but it wasn't something new. It was very old and ancient. It wasn't like I learned it. It's just like there was that awakening and then another awakening. People were just coming, popping out at different times. And so I remember, I remember, trying to tell somebody about, the Tartarian Empire. This is like, they're like, what the who? And I feel like a lot of it is it's kind of a Men in Black situation, right? It's like one little flash and everything's gone, and so, but what they can't do is they can't change our genetic coding, and so this is why they're trying to change our genetic coding in different ways, right? They're trying to hijack that system. And for those of you who know that, like, one of the missions is to protect your codes, to protect your light codes from contamination, from dying off. And so, at least mine is. I don't know if everybody else is, but I know that for me, it's like re regenerating and helping people to better. I think one of my gifts is when people, why I work as a somatic sexologist and sexological bodyworker and do hands-on work, is that they're blocking the body, and if the body doesn't feel, it doesn't remember, right? It doesn't get the nutrients. And so more and more, the body is becoming more and more, as time goes on, almost living in a state of fear from the time that child was born, right? There's all these diseases like early childhood cancers, everything has come in. So they've really done a number on trying to wipe out the memories, wipe out the bodies. But so I think one of the things that I was privy to, over the past 10 years is really kind of helping to support that reconnection, and that is through the energy waves. That is through, things that we now call like Reiki or golden light. Those are things that you can get the codes on your own if you are tapped in. You can bring them to you. They can be transferred easily if you awaken. And so one of the things that it's important, if you're one of those people, not everybody is that. If that is part of like your your calling that especially the women, we are this, we are helping the divine masculine guide that remembrance, because that waking up has to happen on many levels. Like you could see, it's like what's happening out there. Like we can't push away what's happening, but you can awaken to remembering, your wisdom.
Now that leads me to my final question for this session, because obviously um, we can do this for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, um, there's a hmm, there's a little bit of a divide going on right now, especially here in the West, in this country, between men and women.
Yeah.
Perhaps a little lack of empathy, a little less understanding, less willingness to kind of see each other where they are, kind of work things out, perhaps.
Hmm.
Um, Collectively, there's a certain healing that is taking place,
Hmm.
because even in isolation, um, reflection is a must. How often and how frequent,
Hmm.
that's based on the individual, but reflection must happen.
Yeah.
In this 10 year, in this 1 year, where it's a little bit more positive energy, perhaps, than the nine we had last year, because nine is delusional.
Hmm.
Nine is essentially trapped between this energy of death and life, this cycle of rebirth. But the one is born, the one is running, the one is crawling, moving, flying, is moving. Um, Everything isn't necessarily moving together or moving towards each other.
Hmm.
In this energetic space, in this energetic season, what advice have you for the collective in terms of not necessarily rectifying this, but being able to find benefit or find pleasure, or allow yourself to find pleasure in this, because it logic doesn't make it make sense, right? It has to come from somewhere else.
Hmm. Yeah. It's definitely been something that probably, this I always say this kind of divide is is um is visible, right? They've been, for many reasons, this divide has been created, like, on purpose, so that we're not coming into union, physically, spiritually, and somebody who's queer. It's like I just want to say, I don't want to get stuck in this man woman game. I want to, like, really add that layer here, that um, it's first and foremost energetics, right? I think what's happening. Um, we don't have to go into the whole history of feminism and what that did,
Right. Oh, we.
Right. That's just a whole nother fucking debacle, right? Of, the of completely just exhausting women. White women coming in thinking that they were, getting their equal rights, and forgetting, like, the certain energetics of the body. And right now, what's happening, I guess, in that realm is what's called fourth wave feminism, where it's more of like returning to, like, ancient cosmologies, right? Where you're bringing in the spiritual aspect, that this is spiritual. Feminism is now spiritual, and where it was once political, and it's kind of all of it. But and and then there's also like the womanist. Alice Walker talks about womanism, and there's so many different ways people come in, and so more and more, I think there's a lot of like backtracking and women saying, no, no, we want to be with men, we love men. But we've lived through like about 5 decades of the castration cycle, which
Hmm.
I've definitely been part of too. Because hey, it's like I'm impressionable. I'm a human just like everybody else. And of course, I went through it with like my husband. Even there was like moments of castration within the moments of pleasure. Like this is part of learning. Like you're learning how to communicate, but nobody ultimately. What it is our words. It's your communication. Nobody is being taught how to communicate at all. Everybody's losing the art of the art of seduction is gone.
Hmm.
The art of noticing somebody is his like the very few old players that have that swag. You know what I'm saying? Like they did learn that art of seduction, and at the core, um, you know, what I'm talking about is like ancient ways of relating. You know, they were on higher frequencies. Our words were like they're what vibrated to another person. So I guess what I would say to people who are out there who are like, oh, I can't find a good man, or I can't find a good woman, or what did it we're really fucking jaded. Like we are so saturated with like bullshit. Like get rid of your fucking TV, go take a hike, start reading books, start sitting and just looking at your partner's eyes, hold their hands, take a breath together, cut your hours down, start your own businesses together. Don't work a 9 to 5 job. Start learning how to communicate. Just make time for the divine in your life. Like start with your divinity. Know yourself. Into me I see. Intimacy. You are not going to have a connection with anybody unless you know yourself. Into me I see. When I see into me, then I can see into somebody else. And that's why it's easy for me. And, some people say it's a detriment, but I actually think it's the gift. I didn't have it always. Maybe I had it always, but in partnership, I was just like everybody else. I had a hard time in my marriage, and I had a great time too. You know, I loved being a wife. I love being I love partnership. Oh, it's so fun. Relating, smelling. But like these days, it's really difficult to find. We're pitted against each other. The way men are talking about women, the way women talk about men. Um, and I hate this idea like, well, not all men, not all women. It's like, yeah, well, let's just like pause. Let's pause for a second, okay? We're coming into year. There's a lot of sexual energy. There's a lot of that creative energy. Make everything about creating together. Make it about communicating, creating. You know.
What I notice, um, and this intrigues me to no end. The more whatever is going on, the
Mm-hmm.
more I notice it. The more I notice that it is very reminiscent to um, the idea of evolution or breaking out of something or going to the next level. Re- when you think about orgasm,
Mm-hmm.
orgasm is our original state of being,
Oh yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah. Fully
When you
tested.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, even in meditation, when Amini Padme owned the 10,000 petal lotus, it's also a reference to the womb, right? The
Hmm.
10,000 points of light that comes from the womb space, right? So, um, you think about what that really means in terms of like being in a constant state of orgasm.
Mm.
When you think about that, now this is where you can begin to see the folly in logic, because logic means thinking aggressively and thinking once, as opposed to thinking feminine and thinking twice,
Mm.
right? um based upon feeling, as opposed to based on points, based
Mm.
on what we see. um there's a level of blindness, I think, that comes into it, because we're so hyper focused on we and the individual and what the individual wants, as opposed to I want to be this for somebody else,
Right.
or at the very least, I want to reflect, or find a reflection for who I actually am. That's not always going to be the most pleasant experience, because we have to think about what that actually means. And if we want to get to this state of being a great partner,
Yeah.
in order to attract one, you have to be one. So you have to be refined through trauma and fire and horrible environments like we supposedly have right now. If that's actually the case, it puts more of a smile on my face, because the rarity you have to attract, and what you're seeking ultimately is seeking you.
I agree. I mean, that's you're definitely going to magnetize that, like as you are clearing out the pieces, and it's at a cellular level, really. I think a lot of the things that, I mean, gosh, we could probably go into a whole nother conversation about like clearing parasites out, and like I think a lot of times people talk about like their shadows. Like our shadow is always with us. Like integrating that part, like really showing somebody that part. That's like the nitty gritty. Like that's the part I love. So, like some people don't want to do that. They want to just come with their like, hi, I'm an insurance agent and I'm a healer. It's like, I'm a motherfucking badass bitch. Like, I'm a wild woman who comes from like deep, you know, Sicilian peasant hands, no, African roots. Like this is what no, I want to go deep. Don't give me your surface shit. I think this is what humanity, as we go into relationships. So if you want me to give advice, is go into the nitty gritty. Get that shit done, okay? Get it done. Look at it, confront it, be it, say it. Yes, you know, I like fucking this person, or I want 5 wives, or I want 3 husbands, or name whatever it is that you really want. Like, start to tell the truth. Like, people are like fucking editing everything. I edit. Even for you could hear the difference from the beginning of the show to now, because now I'm really comfortable. Now I'm like, okay, let's let it all hang out. Let me tell you all the shit. I think that because a lot of times like we're supposed to keep things very like, oh, don't share everything. People are going to think a certain way about you. You know what, I don't give 2 fucks anymore. When you start to not give any fucks anymore about how others think, then that's where you understand, like, you're going to attract another person like that, and then you're going to be like, oh, this is us. Like, what are we going to create now? What are we going to create together? And so, yeah, if you haven't, I mean, have you done your shit? Have you faced the parts that you don't want to face yet? Kilo? Like, where are you at? Like, let me ask you that. Like where are you? Like, here, we're in this man woman dynamic right now, you know, like as friends. And it's like, as a woman, I was like, okay, I can see your shadows before you even want to tell me them.
So there's a there's an allegory I use with my students. Um, you're familiar with Peter Pan?
Of course.
You remember in the Disney cartoon, from the 50s to 60s,
Mm-hmm.
when Peter went to visit Wendy in the nursery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the way that love works, because love is actually the only thing that exists, but that's another conversation too.
Right.
Um, Wendy has always been in love with Peter.
Mm-hmm.
She always has been and always will be, and of course she is. Peter
Mm-hmm.
is completely oblivious to this because he's lost in his ego.
Right.
So when he flies into the nursery and begins to um, ruminate a little bit, his ego, i.e., his shadow, detaches and begins to
Right.
fly around the room. He tries to catch it and he can't. And this is because he's essentially traumatized. He's broken. He's missing something, right?
Right.
He's missing his other half. Wendy recognizes this instantaneously, and she's able to not only grab a hold of his shadow by what? His foot, his soul. What's on the bottom of your foot? Your soul, right?
Your soul.
And she's able to reattach it and sew it back together.
That's what we.
So I had that done to me a few times throughout this life, but specifically um, when I died about 6 times 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that put things in perspective um, through every stage of my life. It reverberated back, and then finally it allowed me to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
So currently, I'm more thankful than I've ever been. 2025 was the greatest year I've ever experienced.
Mm.
And 2026 is actually, believe it or not, already better. 30 days into it. So I'm extremely thankful. More creative, and I have more ideas than I know what the fuck to do with. Um, but I'm just writing them down, and I'm working on what I can work on.
Yeah.
I cannot thank you enough for being my first guest of the year.
Oh,
After the hiatus I have taken from YouTube, um, but I've been anxious to get back at it because this space specifically, I created for people like you,
mm,
polymaths who are about their spiritual business and about giving people the opportunity to be their best version now in all
mhm.
ways. And you do that. You are the epitome of that. So I cannot thank you enough.
Mm. I received that, and I always say it's really a reflection, right? We've known each other for a while, and I think it's taken this to this moment, right, to come full circle and say, okay, I was sharing with you, like, nobody's ever said, called me a polymath. It was like, I never even thought of myself like that, ever. I always just, but people always used to say things like, oh my God, why are you so good at everything you do? Why are you such a Renaissance woman? All those things. And now I'm like, oh, it's all kind of come to this pinnacle, right? Where now I get to share like this joy and like Wendy, I think one of the things I really love is not to like not to think people are broken, but to really think that they're perfect, and that includes like coming back into their wholeness and you know knowing that knowing that we can do that in so many different ways with one another. I think this is the year where you're going to see a lot of women doing that, like you were saying, like that opposition against man-woman dynamic. This is the year, I think, where that shift happens, and there's this leaning in already. You could see it. Like, people aren't going away from each other. They're actually coming into deep relationships again. They're coming into, like, you know, rebuilding the knowledge bases and the wisdom, the spiritual foundations. Um, and so thank you for having me as your first guest. It's such an honor. I mean, I've seen, like, um, what you put out there, and I've been in rooms with you. I'm like, oh my God, this person's so amazing, so knowledgeable. So I feel just as, if anything, probably more honored just to have that kind of reflection, and be here. So to everybody who's watching, I mean, I don't know if anybody's made comments anywhere else or been watching, but I'm so grateful, and I'm excited to go into this year knowing that this is one of the first things. I also took a hiatus from podcasts so I could work on my master's degree, and when I graduated, I'm like, I'm going to speak up this year. You know, I'm going to be talking. So that's one of my goals and intentions. And like, you picked up, and when you asked me, I was like, look, there it is. Boom. Write it down, ask for it, magnetize it to you. This is the year. My voice is definitely not going to be silent. And, you know, your pleasure is is radical. Being in pleasure is radical. So make it a radical thing for your life. Being your pleasure.
Most definitely. Lucia, we have all of your links in the description as well as in the ticker at the bottom of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any events or anything coming up that you want to plug or shout out?
I do. It's in the works, but my beautiful sisters, Lady Holly and Nikki Monty, out of Atlanta, and Lady Holly out of New York City. We're gathering together in May. I think the first weekend of May, maybe like the 1st of May. We'll let you know soon. But we're going to be doing something in New York State, I believe, maybe upstate New York. Coming together, Nikki Monty, beautiful sis. She is like this. She's our vibration sound gong. You know, she gets deep into the realms, and of course, spiritual gang star Lady Holly is kind of my twin, except, yeah, she's my twin. She's my sister from a cosmic mister. Beautiful, beautiful goddess, as you know, and the three of us will be coming together. I'll be speaking at the Detroit Psychedelic Society conference. The Detroit conference, if you are listening, is going to be freaking amazing this year. It's in August. I think it's like the 21st of August to the 24th. And we're really building a lineup. So I'll be speaking there probably around the topics of using mushrooms and menopause, something around like becoming the sensual sage. So really speaking to women of all ages as they grow and how to come into that fullness, stay juicy. So really like womb health. And yeah, right now that's the lineup. There might be a retreat tossed around in Jamaica. There's a lot of ideas. You know, I'm also getting a PhD, so it's like I take a lot of like one-on-one clients, but I have been asked to potentially do a course just for people identified as men. Like, I had put together a course maybe like 4 years ago called Rise of the Divine Masculine, and never put it out because it just was so rapid. Everything happened at once. And so I've reformulated it, and I would like to do it in like live. I'd like to have a three, like 1 to 3 month container to like support that shadow reattachment.
That would be dope.
I know, right? I was like, I just love it because I love men. I'm just a lover of everybody, but I definitely love men. I'm you know, we don't need to beat each other up anymore. We just need to like tell each other the truth. That's it.
I am in full agreement. Full agreement. I will be there in August. I look very much forward to that. I look forward to everything that you have coming up. Please keep me in the know. This is the
I
first
will.
of many appearances. I am hopeful. We're gonna have to do one of these on Clubhouse as well, so we can
Oh
get
my gosh, yes. Let's do it. Oh
you
my
know what I'm
clubhouse
saying.
days. Yes. I do. I was just talking to Holly about that. I was like, oh, like we do have a room called Divine Feminine Alchemy that I started, which has a nice following, and we haven't opened it up. And then Wednesday nights we used to have the womb space with Kayla, and we were in the heart space with Uncut for a long time, the relationship
Yeah,
expert room with Scrap.
yeah,
Gosh, there's so many great rooms that we're coming in, and I can't even remember them all. But there was a lot of fun, and I would love for that to come back into fruition. We had a good time. We had some good times. We learned a
yeah,
lot from each other. I think Clubhouse was again using our voices, right? So we're teaching each other. We're
yeah.
coming together from around the world.
Most definitely. Clubhouse has a level of authenticity you can't really get from too many other platforms because it's just your voice and it's just your energy. And
Yeah.
that authenticity shines. You know what I mean? You know, that intention really, really shines.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, this year it may be a little bit more needed, but it'll damn sure be a little bit more fun.
I agree. Woohoo!
That is something to look forward to. I thank you, Lucia. We will talk to you again shortly. Love, peace, and power to everybody tuning in and who will. We'll
Peace.
be back next week with another special guest. Love, peace, and power to you and yours. Good night.
Ciao.